Okay, we welcome to the room John McDaid. He's the SEC Coordinator of Football Officials. Officiating always brings up a lot of questions, usually on Sundays and Mondays. This is your chance to ask a few right here. So we'll go ahead and open it up. We'll start on the left side, fourth row.
Dan Peck, ESPN 1067. New rules in place about feigning injuries to get an advantage. How does the conference plan to approach a new new ruling in college football?
Good morning, Dan. How are you? I'll answer it two different ways. The first is from the playing rules. The college commissioners who make up the de facto board of managers for College Football Officiating LLC asked the AFCA, American Football Coaches Association, to come up with their approach to combat feigned injuries. The playing rules, and I've talked about this in the past, the playing rules committee has tried to, for probably at least the last 4 or 5 off seasons in committee, try to devise ways to change the playing rules to address this. And they could never come up with a way that addressed it and didn't otherwise make a travesty of the game or change these facets of the game too much that we get away from what the spirit of the rules are all about. And in concert with AFCA, the Rules Committee came up with a rule change this year where after we make the ball ready for play, what does that mean? After we put the ball at the spot where it's going to be next snapped from, and the official walks off the ball, it's now ready for play, should a player present himself as injured such that an official needs to call an official's timeout for injury, that team will be charged one of its 3 timeouts for that half, and should the team be out of the timeouts, they'll be charged a 5-yard delay of game penalty. So that's the playing rule change this year that the officials need to account for. Your question asked how the SEC or the conference is going to address it, right? There is an understanding between the Southeastern Conference office, the commissioner, and our 16 schools and coaches on what our expectations are with this kind of tactic, this kind of behavior. And it's not my place to comment on that. It comes out of the commissioner's office, right? And it was reported on mid-season last year. But there's also that element of it. That element of it is obviously only a post-game review and possible discipline related to something that would happen on the field, whereas the playing rule change is something that will actually affect the playing of the game inside the 60 minutes of the game.
We'll stay on the fourth row.
Hi, I'm Joey Lamar from WSAV in Savannah. I guess 2 questions. One, are you still, also doing this Sun Belt Conference as well? I know you're over SEC, but are you also still doing the Sun Belt? And the second question is, when teams submit calls for review to see why something was called, something wasn't called, when they get that feedback, is that something that you share with officials? Like if a play should have been a foul and it wasn't called, is that something that you share with those officials? Or if it was the opposite, do you share with the team, hey, this is why this was called this way or wasn't called in this way?
Yeah. Our officiating consortium, since when I took this position in 2020, is comprised of the Southeastern Conference, the Sun Belt, and the Southern Conference, the officiating for those 3 conferences, right? From 2020 forward, I always had an assistant coordinator for the Southern Conference that was responsible for the management of the officiating roster, the assignments, including postseason assignments, right? But all of the training and development for our officials was always owned by myself, right? And all the training and development that I come out inside our football officiating program applies equally to the SEC, the Sun Belt, and the Southern Conference. By the way, the assistant coordinator for the Southern Conference was also responsible for the evaluation of the officials. This past offseason, we've hired a second assistant coordinator, Mr. Wayne Winkler, as the assistant coordinator for the Sun Belt. And Wayne was a longtime referee in the Sun Belt, very familiar to the schools and to Commissioner Keith Gill in the Sun Belt. So just like we do in the Southern Conference, Wayne, this upcoming season, is going to be responsible for the management of the roster. Obviously, there was an existing officiating roster for the Sun Belt when he took over this past offseason. But he's responsible for the management of the roster, the assignments, and the game-to-game evaluation of the officials. But the training, they still get from myself. We have, as an example of this, we have our preseason clinic with our officials next week in Birmingham. It still comprises of approximately 250 both on-field and replay officials will be there getting the training and development. As far as your second question, we evaluate, like I was talking about, we evaluate our officials each and every game, each and every play. And as part of that evaluation process, we identify both correct and incorrect calls for when we put a flag on the field. We call this the accuracy. But we also identify what we call missed calls. Here's a foul that occurred that was not called, and this is a missed call, right? So their evaluation has both of those elements in it. When a team sends me plays to review after a game, they typically do it Sunday evening or Monday morning, it's both of those varieties, right? They may be questioning when we put a flag on the field. They may be questioning, hey, please look at this action right here. Why wasn't this called as a foul? And I have a commitment to our teams, have a commitment to Commissioner Sankey that there's not two answers for the same play, right? If I admit to a team that we missed a call or it was an incorrect call, it matches the evaluation that the official received for that particular play.
Middle, fourth row.
John, Jared Bates, WNSP, Mobile, Alabama. You mentioned the consortium with the Sun Belt and the Southern Conference. How does conference realignment present new challenges and obstacles to your job and your office with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma a year ago and now the Sun Belt realignment coming up next season with Texas State and Louisiana Tech kind of swapping spots?
You know, I've been in Birmingham now for 4 years, and Mobile seems like it's 2.5 states away. I've been in Nashville. I can't even count how many times I've been in Nashville. I haven't been to Mobile once. Good to hear from you. It hasn't really impacted myself and our program that much. The Sun Belt, when I came in this position in 2020, the Sun Belt was comprised of 10 teams, and they expanded to 14 teams. I believe it was after the 22 season. I had to add 2 additional officiating crews, go from 5 to 7 officiating crews, both on field and replay. So it was quite a bit of hiring. In fact, it was a magnitude of hiring that not only myself, but none of my peers really had to do in a single off season, right? So it was a challenge, but it was a 1-year challenge, and we got over that hump. When we had Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC for the 24 season for the first time, I added an additional crew, both on field and replay, so we went from 9 to 10 crews, and a little bit lighter lift because I was only looking for 8 on-field officials, 2 replay officials instead of 16 and 4 that I had to do with the Sun Belt. When there's realignment such that there's teams leaving the Sun Belt, we haven't had anyone leave the Southeastern Conference, obviously, but leaving the Sun Belt as an example, it really hasn't. We have Texas State leaving now. It's been announced it's going to be leaving after this season, but we're going to have Louisiana Tech, I believe is being reported, I don't know necessarily confirmed, coming in their spot. It's not really going to affect us. So the last part of it, though, is probably the biggest part of it, right? It's new relationships. Right, it's new teams that maybe are not necessarily understanding on how we do things, right? And so in the spring, and Wayne's doing this now in the Sun Belt. I have a goal to visit every team at their school once per calendar year, and I can't do them all in the spring. I can't do them all in August, so I do. It's usually half and half in the spring, and half in the August. And if we have any new teams, any new coaches in the conference, I prioritize visiting them in the spring so I can get them as best as possible, be there to answer their questions, get them up to speed as quick as possible, how we do things and whatnot. That's probably the biggest challenge, the new people, the new teams.
Left side, third row.
Good morning, AP Stidham of AP As We See It. What's the most difficult call in college football, and what's the most prevalent question you get from some of those coaches?
I'll have 2 answers for you. The first is, what's the most difficult call to the officials on the field because they have to make it in real time, watching it once from just one particular angle, right? I'd say defensive pass interference is probably the most difficult. There's other close ones, but that's the one. And the reason I think that makes it that much more challenging in the college games. I don't watch the National Football League in season. I just need to get away from football if I actually have some free time in season. But as soon as December, I come back from Atlanta from our SEC championship game. I start watching the National Football League for the last, 3 weeks of the regular season, and then I watch the postseason. And there's certain aspects of the Sunday game that really jump out at me. And one of them is that during a passing down, the ball's usually on a flatter trajectory and it's in the air less, right? We have more what I call jump balls downfield, between a defender and a receiver. And that two players waiting for a ball to come down out of the sky and they're jostling for position and whatnot makes it very difficult, right? So that's my first answer to you would be defensive pass interference remains a challenge. We also have a much higher pass run ratio today than we did 15, 20 years ago. And we're running more no-huddle tempo types of offenses. So we're throwing the ball much more today than we were 15, 20 years, which makes it that much more difficult as well. The second is just for questions from coaches. And this is, I believe college football, it somehow needs to figure out how to explain targeting such that a reasonable person can grasp the frameworks of judgment that we're using to make the call. Here we are more than a decade after instituting this rule. And by the way, for those of you that have been around long enough, half the targeting rule is the old spearing rule. One of the suggestions the Southeastern Conference has had to the NCAA Playing Rules Committee is just go back to calling that spearing, because that's something that I think is more self-evident of what it is by calling it spearing than calling it, targeting use of the crown of the helmet. But it's not that we necessarily have, particularly in replay, because it's a reviewable aspect of the game, it's not that we necessarily have a difficult time with the judgment of it in the replay booth. Although I understand at times it's controversial because the judgment is around. It's just that from the get-go, the fans, the announcers on TV, they have a difficult time understanding exactly what is the framework of judgment we're using. By the way, I don't put the teams, the coaches in that same area as the fans and TV talking heads. I think the coaches do a fairly good job of understanding the framework of judgment we're using on the targeting call.
Final question.
Following up on the feigning rules changes, the feigning injuries rules changes, what are your biggest concerns and what do you think could be the biggest adjustments for officials trying to enforce the new rule?
We are not, we on the field are not in the practice for observing this kind of thing, right? We have, our entire careers have gone about our business such that we're assuming the 22 players are on the field ready for the next down, and should someone present themselves as injured, we react to it, right? To enforce this new rule, we have to be more alert, right? And there's going to be a moment, I don't know if it happens necessarily in the SEC this upcoming season, but there's going to be a moment somewhere in the nation playing the 2025 season where TV video can show that a player went down after the ball was made ready for play, but the 8 officials on the field didn't see it, and therefore they're not going to enact the new rule. It's going to happen, right? And it's not a reviewable element of the game, so replay can't get involved to help out there. So that's where the challenge is going to be.
John, thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to see everybody. Enjoy your week.